Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a really fascinating breakdown by content creator Rita regarding modern masculinity and communication. He argues that modern men have unconsciously adopted a set of detrimental communication traits that are actively hindering their personal and social success. We are going to unpack his concepts step by step, taking a close look at exactly what behaviors he believes men need to identify and unlearn.
Okay, let's dive into this and map it out. We're going to start with Rita's foundational philosophy, and then we'll look at four specific behavioral traits: the trap of gossip, envy versus honorable competition, emotional reactivity, and finally, the art of listening.
All right, starting us off is Section 1, the modern masculinity dilemma. This is the foundational theory that sets the stage for everything else.
So, Rita's baseline premise starts with how a lot of modern men are raised. He points out that many men today grow up in households where the father is frequently absent, whether that's due to work, divorce, or just the way society is set up right now. Because boys are raised predominantly by their mothers in these scenarios, the argument here is that they unconsciously observe, mimic, and adopt feminine behavioral traits. It's a theory completely rooted in early environmental conditioning. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the strict binary lens the creator uses to filter human behavior. He sets up these two distinct categories. On one side, he defines feminine energy as being characterized by chaos, high emotion, and constant fluctuation, basically mood swings. Then, on the flip side, he defines true masculine energy as order, stability, and emotional containment. Retta argues that for men to find real success, they literally have to intentionally shift away from that reactive chaos and actively build up structured stability.
Which brings us to Section 2, the trap of gossip, covering the first specific toxic social habit he says needs to go.
According to Rita, the very first acquired habit to unlearn is gossip. We're talking about engaging in negative, unproductive conversations about people behind their backs. The source argues this is fundamentally a toxic habit borrowed from women's social gatherings. Conversations that drift into who did what, who messed up, or whose life is falling apart. Rita emphasizes that for a guy, sitting around a cafe just criticizing people or spreading rumors is completely unproductive and, in his view, actively damages a masculine frame. Let's walk through a specific scenario he warns about, called the pillow talk trap. Step 1, it starts off as just an innocent, late-night chat between a husband and wife. But then, Step 2, it devolves into gossiping about friends or coworkers. And Step 3 is where Rita says the real damage happens. He argues that by joining in on this gossip, the husband inadvertently steps into the role of a girlfriend. According to the source, doing this totally shatters his masculine aura and actively kills marital attraction. Moving right along, let's look at Section 3, envy versus honorable competition and how we handle success. We are going to break down this crucial distinction the creator makes about ambition. First up, we've got envy. He defines this as a destructive feeling that's totally rooted in deep insecurity. An envious person, like a frenemy, doesn't just want what you have, they actually want to see your blessings destroyed. They'll attack your reputation out of pure spite. But on the other hand, we have honorable competition. This is presented as the masculine ideal. It means looking at someone who's successful, getting inspired by them, genuinely wishing them the best, and then using their success as absolute fuel for your own hard work. The takeaway? You've got to replace destructive envy with honorable drive. This leads us smoothly into Section 4, emotional reactivity and anger, focusing on the loss of emotional control. So, the source highlights a few clear signs of emotional reactivity. We're talking about being easily provoked by just words, being super quick to yell and argue, acting out of pure defensiveness, and completely lacking rationality in the heat of the moment. Rizal directly links these volatile mood swings back to that chaos of feminine energy we discussed a minute ago. He argues that if a man loses his temper over minor provocations or random online comments, it shows a total lack of emotional containment. And that makes it pretty much impossible for him to be seen as a rational, grounded leader. And this brilliantly illustrates the point. To visualize this ideal state of emotional control, Rita uses this really vivid metaphor. You must be the unshakable mountain that the waves of emotion crash against. He uses this to explain that true masculinity requires absolute containment. When provocations or arguments or just really high emotions come at you, you don't react. You don't yell. You simply remain an immovable, stable force right in the middle of the chaos. Our final trait shifts from how you react to how you converse. Let's look at Section 5, the art of listening and abandoning ego. The source points out that a lot of modern men have developed this habit of excessive talking and constant interrupting. He actually has a great term for them:
energy vampires. These are the folks who interrupt constantly, completely dominate the conversation, block you from ever making your point, and are entirely driven by their own ego to prove they're right. Rada explains that dealing with an energy vampire is just incredibly frustrating and honestly disrespectful. He says it's a habit rooted in a pretty severe lack of internal discipline. To counteract this, Rita brings up a classic proverb, represented perfectly by the numbers 2 and 1. You were born with 2 ears, right? But only 1 mouth. Meaning, you should listen twice as much as you speak. He notes that the ability to actually sit and listen to someone without jumping in to defend yourself or steal the spotlight is kind of becoming a forgotten art, but it is a highly effective and highly respected trait.
So the real crucial point here is understanding the power of silence. By letting go of that desperate need to constantly talk, you actually create something incredibly powerful. Speaking only at the right time cultivates mystery, enhances your physical presence, and naturally commands an aura of respect. Rada really stresses that true presence doesn't come from being the loudest guy in the room, it comes from being the most thoughtful, intentional, and contained. Wow, we've covered a wealth of insights today, analyzing this framework from the trap of gossip all the way to the power of silence. So I want to leave you with this final provocative question. Which of these communication habits are you going to focus on mastering first? Seriously, think about your own daily interactions and how these principles might actually apply to your life. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious and keep learning.